it straight? Morning, sir.
Morning.
Guys, I shouldn't at 8:03 be asking if you're ready, honestly. I shouldn't at 8:03. Are you ready? Is the live up? I talk GIS live, is it up? I wish I could deduct people pay for lateness. Not you, Evan. You bring the rain, so you're always on time. Is the stream up? Listen, my man. Ready? Hi, good morning, and welcome to another edition of our post-cabinet press briefing. We start here 8 o'clock every Wednesday morning. We're a little bit late this morning, so we want to apologize for that. We're usually on time. This morning, we have a very special guest with us. We have the Honorable Minister of Local Government and Rural Community. There's been some changes. Local Government and Community Development, as well as his team here. We also have Mr. Evan Thompson from the Met Service, and we expect to have a member of the team from ADPEM. The reason why this postcab is very important is that it's hurricane season, and Minister Mackenzie has some updates along with Evan, who will be speaking to us about what to expect this hurricane season. And ADPEM will be here as well to speak to us about the plans and programs and strategies that will be in place to assist citizens this hurricane season. But first, I want to move to Minister Mackenzie for him to give his presentation, and then Mr. Thompson will join to give his presentation as well. Minister Mackenzie.
Thank you very much, Minister Morgan, and thank you for the opportunity to participate in this press briefing. There are a number of issues I want to touch this morning, and I'd like to first of all start with the question of our infirmaries and the situation surrounding the street people, and also a number of other related matters. We would have noticed in a number of daily newspapers over the last couple of weeks a number of facilities that are privately operated that provide care for the less fortunate persons who are infected with HIV and other such related illness. I make reference to the St. Patrick Foundation, which appeared on the front page, I think, of the Jamaica Observer, where they are expressing grave concerns about the continuous operation of the facility and the fact that they are finding it extremely challenging to get the kind of support that is required to continue the operations of these facilities. The government will never want to see the closure of any facility that provide keep and care for that sector of the society. We are concerned that a number of homes over the last couple of months have gone through some changes. We did intervene and absorb a number of persons from a private facility into a number of infirmaries. I have given instructions and the discussions have commenced with the St. Patrick Foundation as it relates to the next move. We don't want the facility to be closed. We noticed that they are concerned about the costs to operate the facility. There are more than 25 persons, 19 persons within the facility, and we have commenced the discussions to see how best we can assist, whether we can take the responsibility of running the facility. We'll have to look at the legal ramification before, or if not, we will bring these people into the existing system as it relates to our infirmary. I just want to give the country the assurance that the government of Prime Minister Andrew Holness will do what is necessary to ensure that these facilities continue to offer the services that are required. The government runs some 13 infirmaries plus 2 golden age homes, and we do provide financial assistance, annual financial assistance to private homes or institutions right across the country, and we will continue to do so. As it relates to the parish of Portland and the concerns that have been raised about the increase in physical attacks on the homeless population, we are well advanced as it relates to finding a location for the construction of a shelter for the town of Port Antonio. I will be visiting Portland on the weekend to have a look at the facility, but I just want to again emphasize that the government will not allow the homeless population to be abused. We will do everything that is within our powers to ensure that we find suitable and ideal accommodation for these persons right across the country. So our next stop will be Portland. I want to touch another subject that has been in the news over the last month or so, and it speaks to the frequency of fires in our markets right across the country. As you are aware, that the Musgrave market in Portland, a significant portion of the market was destroyed by fire. I want to say, based on the initial investigations from the Jamaica Fire Brigade and from others, that this was not an act of arson at the Musgrave market. So I want to make that clear. The facility was badly damaged by the fire, and we are now moving to put in place the requisite systems to carry out the necessary works that is required to restore the market. We have already allocated $10 million to the Portland Municipal Corporation to undertake cleanup exercise and to provide temporary shelter for the butchers in the market who have been severely affected. The Member of Parliament on her own has gotten private support to assist the vendors. But I want to make it clear, because already I have heard comments being made about the role of the Member of Parliament as it relates to the reconstruction of the market. The reconstruction of the market is a matter for the Ministry of Local Government and the Portland Municipal Corporation. Any design, any costing will be undertaken by the Ministry of Local Government. And if there are private interests who wants to be a part of it, we welcome that. But I want to put to rest the mischief that is being made about what will happen to the repairs and the future of the Musgrave market in Portland. So let me state categorically that no decision has been taken to divest the interests of the Musgrave market to anybody. It is the property of the municipal corporation, and whatever repairs are going to be done, the funding will be provided by the Ministry of Local Government. The market is insured, and the insurers have gone to the market and they are doing their assessment as it relates to the Musgrave market. I will be visiting the market on Friday to have a first-hand look at what has taken place and to engage the municipality and the vendors. Let me say that whatever work will be undertaken on the market, we will include the vendors in the discussions to get an idea from the vendors as to what they think would be the best way out in order to make the market conducive. I want to turn to the Linstead market. At around 4:20 a.m. on the 1st of June, I got a call in the early morning from the Commissioner of the Jamaica Fire Brigade, and subsequent to that, a call from the Mayor of Spanish Town advising that a section of the Linstead market was deliberately set on fire by 3 men who were seen running away from the market. Some 20 stalls were destroyed, and the smoke did damage to a section of the market. A couple days after, fire was set to a section of the Spanish Town market, which resulted in a number of stalls and vendors that were affected. Now, ladies and gentlemen, within the last 5 years, 10 markets across the country caught fire. 9 of those markets, the fire were set deliberately. Since the beginning of last year to today, we have had some 18 fires at various markets across the country. And the cost to the local authorities has been enormous, well in excess of $150 million worth of damage. has been incurred because of these deliberate acts of arson that we are seeing being played out across the country as it relates to our markets. I want to urge those persons, I did so in my sectorial presentation, that the government will not be held as hostage by any sector of the society who feel that in setting fire to these vital institutions in the country because of the 37 markets across Jamaica. These markets provide not just a service, but a source of livelihood, of income. Hundreds of Jamaicans, their parents provided their education by selling in our markets across the country. And I want to condemn those persons who believe that this is a new form of vulgarity that is being unleashed on the country. So therefore, we are working with the various municipalities to look at how, and I must say that the condition of our markets for many years have been neglected. Since we came into office in 2016, we have done a substantial amount of work, not just upgrading, but building new markets across the country. And we will continue to do so. So I am urging persons, those who are also using the market, to ensure that that is done in an orderly fashion. I could not come to this press briefing without addressing the question of vending that is taking place on the streets and the level of disorder that is associated with vending. It is a problem that we face, and it is a problem that has been growing for a number of years. We are looking now, as a matter of fact, we are working on looking at the issues in the corporate area, Spanish Town, Maypen, Clarendon, and Santa Cruz in St. Elizabeth. Those discussions are well advanced, and in another 2 weeks, I'll be announcing a special program that we will be undertaking in the corporate area and in Maypen, working with the police and with all the stakeholders to try to bring some level of order and decency back to vending and into the major town centers across the country. I want now to turn quickly to the issue of garbage collection. And I want to be clear. We have never said that the new trucks would automatically solve the problems of garbage collection across the country. We have never said that. What we said is that the new trucks will help us to reduce significantly the backlog and to put the National Solid Waste Management Authority in a better position where there can be the timely and structured collection of garbage across the country. The agency was able, with the infusion of the new trucks, to reduce by about 93%. They would have gone a little bit further than 93% of the backlog of garbage in the country. And they would have increased the number of structured collection days. And I was in the parish of St. James last week, and quite a number of persons have expressed, some level of upbeat in the quality now of the collection of garbage. The 50 trucks that are coming into the system by the end of the financial year will give us further room to work. But again, I'm going to say it, and if I sound like a recurring decimal, I will always be saying it. If we provide a garbage truck for every community in Jamaica, that will not change if the mindset of the people is not prepared to accept the changes that is required. We can't talk about how dirty the country is when we ourselves are contributing to that. When people continue to create mini dumps, driving in their vehicles, not just public transport, but some of the most fancy and expensive vehicles that you see driving on the road, wind down the window, out goes the drinks bottle and the cup and the patty bag. The country needs to be more matured when it comes on to how we dispose of garbage. I want to advise that the new structure of the fines will be sent shortly for drafting instructions. But we are not just going to be putting in these new fines. We again are going to be undertaking a massive program of public education. We've been doing it again. And before we introduce any new penalties, the country, by series of town hall meetings and various interactions, will be given an opportunity to raise their concerns and to make suggestions. But the country, beautiful Jamaica, can no longer be held as hostage because of a few Jamaicans who don't have any pride in how they dispose of their waste. The final area of my presentation this morning has to do with the recent rains that the country has been experiencing over the last couple of weeks. You know, when we never had the rains, we were bawling bitterly, complaining how dry it is and we can't survive. Now we're having the rains, we are hearing about dislocations and floodings and, boy, too much rain. I don't know if we want to have the best of both worlds. But the recent rains that we have had in the latter part of May coming into June is cause for concern. And Evan is here and he will speak some more about that. I have heard calls coming about the cleaning of drains and the government is not doing enough and the government needs to do more. Let me state quite clearly what has been put in place by the administration as it relates to mitigation. Members of Parliament, all 63 of us, have been given an allocation for drain cleaning. And that allocation is there, and quite a number of members of Parliament have put in their programs for drain cleaning. That is one phase of it. The municipal corporations, as is customary, would use their PRF allocation for the month of June. So whatever allocations goes to the municipal corporation from May into June, that is what is used for all divisions across the country for drain cleaning exercise. So the government is cognizant that we need mitigation work at the beginning of the hurricane season, and that is being undertaken. So there is no municipal corporation or no member of Parliament can stand up honestly and say that allocations have not been made to them or to the divisions for drain cleaning exercise. And that is not the only allocation. Allocations will be made as we get deeper into the hurricane season. So there is phase 1, and then is phase 2, and there is a third phase at the end of that. Councillors who have their allocations can use their allocations for drain cleaning. So too are members of Parliament who can, out of their CDF, if they so desire, use portions of their CDF for drain cleaning exercise. The results of the rains have seen almost quite a large number of parishes being affected by the rainfall. We have seen where the list of the most affected areas in June. So we see Portland, Clarendon, St. Elizabeth, St. Thomas, Hanover, St. James, Manchester, Trelawney, St. Mary, Westmoreland, and sections of KSA, the corporate area, have been affected by the rains. But the parishes that would have suffered most damage would be St. Elizabeth, St. James, Clarendon would have had major damage to infrastructure. So far, the estimated costs, and this is not the final costs, the estimated costs of damage on parochial infrastructure is in excess of $100 million so far. And we are expecting that once the rain subside and more assessment is undertaken, that we will see an increase in that number. It is something that we are prepared for. The Ministry of Local Government will be able to find the funds to assist in undertaking restoration work to get most of those roadways that have been impacted back into working condition. So while we continue to prepare for an active hurricane season, not only are we providing resources for mitigation purposes, A couple of weeks ago, the Most Honorable Prime Minister launched the month, and he indicated there that the country is in a state of readiness. Our shelters, the 889 shelters across the country are up. Shelters will become necessary when or if we have a situation where persons have to be moved into shelters. Last week, I met with the disaster coordinators island-wide and the ADPEM in Montego Bay. And one of the concerns that was raised in that meeting by the ADPEM and the disaster coordinators is some of the schools that are used as shelters, that many of the schools is putting up resistance for these schools to be used as shelters. Let me say this, that once it is designated, it's a government school and it is designated as a shelter, there is no chairman of any board or any principal that have the legitimacy to refuse the use of the schools of shelters. I have already penned a letter to my colleague, Minister of Education, on the matter. And I know the expression made by the coordinators last week is worrying to them. I must admit that there are some people who go to these schools and do not exercise a level of discipline and care in using the facilities. Our coordinators and the team have been, sensitizing the communities. The Social Development Commission will be a part of that team that will be going around to explain to persons the do's and the don'ts. So when you go into these schools, you must remember that you are only there perhaps for 48 hours, sometimes less than that. But after you leave, schools have to continue. Learning cannot be put on hold indefinitely. So I want to urge the public that if we have to, make sure that when you go to these shelters, we would have indicated already the things that you need to take to the shelter. You can't take no pets into the shelters. And the same protocols that existed during COVID, where persons have to be isolated if it is suspected that they have contracted COVID. The same protocols around the use of shelters that we put in during COVID will be the same protocols that will exist during this period. I want now to invite Evan Thompson to come now and to give an update from the perspective of the Weather Bureau on the situation. Evan.
Thank you very much, Minister. Good morning, everyone. Morning also, Minister Morgan and all other distinguished persons who are here, members of the media. I especially greet you this morning. Well, we have already begun the march through the hurricane season. The hurricane season lasts for 6 months of the year. It starts on the 1st of June, and we are now 2 weeks into the hurricane season, so we're well on our way. We have already experienced one system that developed out of the season. The first system developed a couple of weeks ago, early in the month. That season has already dissipated, no threat to any of us in the Caribbean, and of course not to Jamaica. The peak of the hurricane season usually occurs between August and October. So the traditional peak is actually just about the 10th of September. But as we move into August, going into September, October, that's when we expect a greater frequency of development of tropical storms, hurricanes across the general area, which means the Caribbean, the North Atlantic Ocean, or the Gulf of Mexico. Anywhere in that general region, we could have that kind of development. And so we always have to be ready for that occurrence. We have heard already that the forecast for this hurricane season is that it would be near to normal. I don't know what that means for any of us, really, because if we only have one hurricane produced this year and it occurs in the Caribbean, moves over Jamaica as a major hurricane, it would be nothing normal for us. And so we cannot consider the word normal to be one that allows us to slip into any kind of complacency. Our actions, our preparations cannot be normal. We cannot take the position where when a hurricane watch is announced, that is when we move to the making some kind of preparation. We rush to the hardware stores or we rush to the supermarkets. That should not be our activity, but that is what is normal for us. So we must not adopt the posture of normality as we move through this hurricane season, even if it is considered to be a normal season in terms of the number of storms or hurricanes that could develop. So that is one major thing that I think we must remember. So the latest, we also heard that there were two main systems that would contribute to how active the hurricane season would be. One of them was the sea surface temperatures in the Caribbean region. That continues to be above average. So the temperatures are warmer than usual, and many of us already know that with warmer sea surface temperatures, there is a greater chance of development of storms and hurricanes. So that is one of the, should I say, positives in terms of the development of storms, the increase in sea surface temperatures in the Caribbean area. But on the other side, on the flip side, we see that there is an El Nino phenomenon that has been developing. It has already developed. The El Nino is really characterized by an anomalous warming of the eastern tropical Pacific Ocean, but whenever that occurs, there is a spin-off effect right across the globe with a number of changes in climate. And what happens for us in the Caribbean region is that it reduces the chance of hurricane development. Because of the changes in the atmosphere, it reduces the chance of development. So whereas the temperatures of the waters in the Caribbean are increasing the chance of storms, the El Nino is actually reducing. On average, therefore, we are expecting a more or less normal season because of the interplay between those systems. The El Nino is strengthening, is expected to continue right through the hurricane season, which means that it is good news in terms of the numbers of systems that could develop, but we still do not know where any system will develop and how long it will last or how strong it will become. We can only say that the overall activity is likely to be less active than normal or just about normal. So with the El Nino developing, apart from it affecting our hurricane season, it is also expected to affect some other weather conditions because it also usually means that temperatures over Jamaica are likely to be above normal. We have already begun to experience temperatures that are very warm. There are many complaints about how hot it is. Unfortunately, there's absolutely nothing the Meteorological Service can do to reduce the temperature. But what we can do is to advise you that the temperatures are likely to be above normal going through the hurricane season. Even if it's just 1 degree above the normal, that is significant for many of us. And it will it will be felt. The difference will be felt, and I'm sure not very appreciated when we go through a summer period. So we must bear in mind that temperatures could be warmer. But at the same time, the El Nino also contributes to reduced rainfall during the season. And so with higher temperatures and with less rainfall, there is more stress. And so we must be able to manage that. Minister Mackenzie mentioned just now that we've been having an increase in rainfall over many of our parishes in recent weeks. And the truth is, whenever there is a transition of season, moving from call it the winter season, or what we call the dry season, to the hurricane season, basically, it usually is characterized by an increase, a peak in the rainfall. And that's why we have two main peaks. One in October, when we shift from the hurricane season to the winter season, where we have frontal systems. And the second in May or June, when you have the shift back from those frontal systems to the hurricane season activity. And so we have already witnessed that during May, where we normally expect the peak, that was delayed to the end of May going into June. And that's why you got that increase in rainfall during the period. It is not expected to be a sustained rainfall increase across the country throughout the next few months. So you might be wondering why restrictions have not already been lifted, and because we're getting some rain. It's a meteorological fact that you are getting more rain, and so it is quite likely that we would have seen a relief from meteorological drought conditions, but it doesn't mean that we are out of the woods where rainfall is concerned. If our aquifers are not filled, if our reservoirs are not filled, we are still in a position where we could realize that we do not have enough water to sustain ourselves going through the rest of the year. So we have to bear that in mind as well. Usually July is a low rainfall period of the month, and so as we move toward July and August, do not expect too much rainfall. Unless we get some tropical waves that are fertile with moisture, it's not likely that we're going to get significant rainfall to really help us to go all the way through to the end of the year. So we have to be mindful of that. So that's basically the report I would want to give you where the hurricane season is concerned. We must be on our P's and Q's and remember that it's not over until the end of November. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Evan. We'll now invite Mr. Richard Thompson from the ODPEM to give his presentation. Mr. Thompson.
Thank you very much, Minister. Good morning, everyone. Just to give a quick report as to the country's state of readiness, you would have heard from Minister Mackenzie in terms of the number of shelters. Coupled with that, as part of our annual preparedness, is to ensure that training is in place, and the ODPEM, along with the local authorities, continue to train our shelter managers to put them in a state of readiness to ensure that they can effectively manage the shelters whenever time persons are in the shelters, along with all the necessary shelter protocols that are in place. Also, on the side of our relief distribution, if that is required, the National Welfare Committee, our humanitarian committee, continues to do extensive work, one of the most active committee of the National Disaster Risk Management Council, to ensure that in the case of any disasters, we are in the hurricane season, but we're also prone to other hazard impacts. We can also have an earthquake in the middle of our hurricane season because we sit in a very active earthquake zone, that the necessary processes are in place to ensure that if we have to respond to persons from a welfare standpoint, that those measures are in place. So that committee continues to do all the work that is necessary to ensure that the country is fully prepared. As it relates to the hurricane season and what ought to be done, in terms of our country's state of readiness, there is work that is being done on the part of the state entities, but that alone cannot ensure that there is ultimate preparation. There's a responsibility from the citizens themselves collectively to ensure that they are doing their work to prepare themselves and to ensure that they are safe throughout the season. So we always say to persons, ensure that you're putting in measures for your homes, that you're putting in measures for your businesses. In terms of your business continuity process, ensure that all the necessary measures are in place, that persons are putting in your rotational supplies, that you don't have a run on supermarkets or shops in the middle of the season. So ensure that all your non-perishables, as best as possible, you have those. You do rotation throughout the season so you don't have goods that are expired and can't be used in the middle of the system. And also ensure throughout the hurricane season that persons, especially those who suffer from these life diseases, if you're diabetic, if you're hypertensive, to ensure that you have all the medications and supplies that is needed, stuff for babies, stuff for the elderly. So we continue to ensure that the work is being done not only at the local level with the parishes and the parish disaster coordinators, but at the national level through the committees of council. The Health Committee of Council is there to ensure, and has done work, to ensure that the COVID-19 protocols that are in place, that have been in place for the past 3 years, will be applied during the hurricane season, or anything that we are doing if we have to respond to persons. So the work continues. It's constant. It's never not just at the beginning of the hurricane season, but the collective work of the state entities that makes up the National Disaster Risk Management process continues to churn to ensure that the country is protected and that we are at a heightened state of readiness. So that is it for me, ladies and gentlemen. We are well prepared in terms of the work that we have to do throughout the season, and the work that we have to do to respond to our population if we are so impacted throughout the hurricane season. And you'd have heard from everyone, every time we speak about hurricane, that given our vulnerabilities, especially as small island developing states, we really do not have to have a storm system to be impacted. We can just have severe weather impacts like what we're having now, and that would have created severe havoc on our country. So it is important that we continue to be ready, and that is our collective responsibility from our state entity and from our general population. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks to Mr. Thompson. It gets confusing. Thompson. Thank you very much for those presentations, and thanks to Minister Mackenzie for joining us today here at the post-cabinet press briefing. I will now open the floor for questions. Any member of the media who have questions, you may raise your hands, and then Naomi will hand you the microphone.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Chanel Spence from the Jamaica Information Service. And Minister Mackenzie, I was wondering, do you have any indication of the possible motives behind the attacks on the markets? And are you able to say if it's coming from, unattached youth just wandering around?
Well, the only possible motive would that somebody would probably feel that if fire is set to the market and it's burned down, it's a source of getting employment. I can only, look, it is difficult to even assess it, but in one case I know it is alleged that it is about the dominance of control while one of the markets in St. Catherine was set on fire. But there could be no motive that one could justify in setting fire to a public market. And you must remember that 98% of our markets are over 100 years old.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Truston Grizzle from Nationwide. And please permit me, I only have 3 questions, right, Minister? The first one is, has the ministry handed over drain cleaning funds to the various municipal corporations? We would have heard coming out of Hanover, that specific corporation is asking for the funds that are to be allocated to them for drain cleaning. Have they received that, and what can you tell us about the other municipal corporations?
Let me respond again to the question. The month of May into June, the allocation that is sent by the Ministry of Local Government, that is known as the Parochial Revenue Fund, all municipalities, long before I became the minister, is authorized to use those funds specifically for mitigation purposes. The funds from the Ministry of Local Government will support that, but not at the beginning of the hurricane season, and everybody knows that. So if that call is made, mischief.
All right, so the second question is, as you stated, a lot of resources have been utilized in upgrading the markets across the country, right? And we would not want that to go down the drain. Now, are there any plans in place to ensure that fires are prevented at these facilities? Are the vendors knowledgeable as to what they are supposed to do in order to limit the damage done to these facilities? And are fire hydrants in close proximity to these markets?
Well, none of the markets that have caught fire was destroyed because of lack of water. The Jamaica Fire Brigade is equipped. The hydrants are in working condition. It is, let me say that if I go back to probably 30 years ago, when markets were king and queens in this country, there was a level of respect and decency for the operations of markets in our country. Now what we find is everybody now comes to the market and treat the market as if the market is not important. The government, since 2016, we have spent more than $600 million in building and upgrading markets across the country. That has never happened before. And we have developed relationships in most markets where there are vending committees who meet regular with the municipalities. I'm not saying that all the markets practice it. But the point you made about what we will do is that we will now have to be looking now. We are going to be rebuilding the Highgate market. So we're going to be now looking to build the Highgate market to put in the safety features around fire. The discussions have commenced with the Jamaica Fire Brigade as to how we can incorporate into the new design of the Highgate market a system that will be able to respond to fire. It doesn't take a deliberate act to start a fire in the market, because you know what is generated in the market itself is combustible in a way that it generates its own heat that can. Okay? So we are looking at that, and the response to your question is that the Highgate market will be the model market that we'll be looking at in terms of how we proceed with markets across the country.
All right, and finally, what consequences, if any, will school principals or members of the various boards face if they refuse persons who want to be admitted in these shelters?
I can't speak to that, but I can say I have had the opportunity some years ago to interact with two chairmen and a principal. And I asked the question, if the school and the thing is in, the title is in your name. Look, the country has to understand that all of us have a responsibility to play, and we cannot have any upmanship on taxpayers' resources. The schools are there to be used as shelters. 98% of our shelters in Jamaica are schools. And the government have spent a considerable amount of money to retrofit a number of schools to make them shelter worthy. And all I'm saying is that the schools should be a part of the process. And I've already penned a letter to the Minister of Education, and I am seeking the ministry's intervention to pass on the message about that.
And Minister, my final question is, are you able to speak at this time on some of the features for the shelter to be constructed in Portland, such as the number of rooms that will be there?
Well, it all depends on the size of the property. One thing we know is that Portland, especially Port Antonio, has one of the fastest rate in terms of growth in street people in the parish of Portland. And they, over the last year, have seen more attacks and deaths than any other parish in the country. So when we look at the drawings, the size of the property is going to what determine what we put down in Port Antonio.
Thank you very much. I suspect we're at 9 o'clock. I want to thank all members of the media here. Also thank the Thompson and Thompson Group and the team from the Ministry of Local Government. Is it rural or community development? Community development.
We still retain the responsibility for rural development, but the name rural development has been taken off, and we have gone back to community development.
Thank you very much. And thanks to Minister Mackenzie for giving us a very comprehensive overview of some of the activities of his ministry and also plans for the hurricane season. Join us again next week. Thanks to those from JIS and the Office of the Prime Minister and PBCJ for being such good assistance. And join us again next week for another, post-cabinet press briefing, 8 a.m. sharp. Thank you very much.